Good morning to everybody. Thank you for your presence. We are delighted to welcome you this morning at that webinar on Government Authorised Exchange Visa. I am Catherine Le-Yawang, the General Manager of the British Chambers of Commerce in France, and our mission is to facilitate Franco-British trade. As you surely know, mobility is one of our key subjects at the moment, as mobility of talents and people is very important between our two countries. So we are delighted to welcome Tara Evans, Program Manager of AIESEC, who will tell us everything on UK visa. But before starting, a few recommendations. Thanks to make sure that you are in mute. Do not hesitate to write your questions on the chat. There is a link on the chat for a questionnaire that we would like you to fill in. And I just would like to say thank you to the team to have organized this webinar. Tara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming this morning. My name is Tara Evans. I'm the Program Manager at AIESEC UK, and I run AIESEC UK's Visa Sponsorship Program. Today, basically, I want to talk to you about the Government Authorised Exchange Visa, which is a temporary work visa specifically for students and graduates to take on internships and other types of work experience in the UK. I understand since the end of freedom of movement between the EU and the UK, one group that has been affected are students who previously were regularly coming into the UK for work experience. And there are a number of companies, universities, students, etc., who are now wondering what they can do to maintain those relationships. AIESEC UK, our company, is a licensed sponsor for the Government Authorised Exchange Visa. And we sponsor hundreds of interns every year on behalf of companies in the UK who are hosting those students. My knowledge is based on nearly a decade of working with this particular visa category and helping companies bring on international talent. I'm going to try to keep this relatively brief and general, and hopefully we'll be able to get to questions at the end so we can get into any more specifics that you might want to know about. All right, so firstly, I'll just give you an overview of the visa itself. It's called the Government Authorised Exchange Visa. You can find an overview on it on gov.uk. I've sort of given you a screenshot here. The Government Authorised Exchange Visa is a category of the temporary worker visa, which was set up in 2008 for people coming to the UK through approved schemes that aim to share knowledge, experience, and best practice, and basically to experience cultural life in the UK. There are several different categories of temporary work. Each of these different visa categories covers a different type of temporary work, and each one requires a completely different visa, and different sponsors will be licensed for different types. For the GAE visa, this is specifically for students and for recent graduates who are coming into the UK to do skilled work that is specific for setting them on their career path. Unlike the skilled worker visa, which requires the employer to directly sponsor migrant workers, the GAE does not permit employers to sponsor their workers themselves. Instead, they have to be sponsored by what is called an overarching body, which would be someone like us, like AIESEC UK. The main difference here is that the skilled worker visa allows employers to hire permanent skilled workers to add to their workforce, while the GAE allows employers to offer training opportunities to young talent, and they may potentially be hired as a skilled worker later on. So to give you a quick summary of the GA visa, we'll talk about the purpose of the visa, the eligibility for the visa, limitations related to the work, and what the typical duration might be. So for starters, we'll get into the purpose. The GAE provides an opportunity for all international students to be considered for internships, even where they do not already have the right to work in the UK. You might have noticed if you're applying for jobs or looking at job opportunities, there are lots of employers in the UK who will specifically state that they are not able to consider any applicants who do not already have the right to work. The GAE opens up these employers to the option of hiring migrant workers without having to sponsor their visas. One thing that we've been doing at AIESEC is trying to bring this visa to the intention of employers who don't hold their own sponsor license, but who may still benefit from taking on that international talent. Approved sponsors like us take over all the responsibilities of sponsorship to make it easier for the employers to hire those students. The GAE visa can only be sponsored by approved schemes, and those approved schemes are the ones that handle all of the reporting duties associated with sponsoring migrant workers. Employers won't have to deal with any audits from the UK regulators. They don't need to have knowledge of UK immigration law. All of that is dealt with by the sponsor. And even if an employer does have a skilled worker license, the GAE offers the opportunity to gauge compatibility with an intern before committing to a permanent offer. If you're a company that does hold a skilled worker license in the UK, you may still feel that hiring international candidates is a big commitment, both financially, in terms of time, effort, and risk. The internships on the GAE visa allow companies the option of a trial period for their working relationship with candidates, and that allows them to make a more informed decision before taking on sponsorship themselves. So a few more details on eligibility. I'm just going to give a general idea of the eligibility because this will also vary from sponsor to sponsor. But for the visa, there is a sponsorship requirement, meaning all applicants must have a certificate of sponsorship from an approved GAE visa scheme. The certificate of sponsorship is a unique reference number that allows migrants to apply for and get entry clearance to enter the UK. This is needed for anyone who wants to work in the UK at all. Applicants must also meet additional eligibility criteria, which will be specific to the scheme they're applying for. There's also a job offer requirement. So you cannot apply for the visa if you haven't yet got a job offer. Applicants must have an offer from a UK registered company, charity, or government department. Companies must have the financial and personnel resources to support the intern. So what this means is that the sponsor, like AIESEC, will assess the company when a request for sponsorship is made. It will be up to that individual sponsorship scheme to look into the company's financial health, the number of permanent employees they have, to decide if they are satisfied that the internship offer is genuine and that the company will be able to carry out the training. And the job they're offering must be paid at least the national minimum wage in the UK. So there's a little bit of an asterisk here. There are some sponsorship schemes that can do unpaid placements, but in general, this is the case for most schemes. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And finally, there's a financial requirement that the interns need to meet. Applicants must provide bank statements to show that they can support themselves in the UK. Alternatively, they may have a sponsor who is willing to guarantee financial support for the intern, which basically means if your sponsor is willing to tick a box and say, I vouch for this candidate, the intern will not be asked to show this extra financial documentation. Okay, so getting into the work limitations of the visa. The idea of this visa is that you are granted the visa based on the intern's eligibility, the employer's eligibility, and the job eligibility, which means the visa is tied to the specific job that you have applied with. So this means that interns can only work for the employer named on their certificate of sponsorship. Interns must only work for the job as described on their certificate of sponsorship. And the certificate of sponsorship can be used only once for the named intern. You can't then use it again if you want to hire somebody else. Certificate of sponsorship is issued by the sponsoring organization, and it's a one-time use document. The details on that certificate will go into the work hours, the salary, the specific duties that the intern will be carrying out, and those then should not vary. If you're saying that they're going to be working 35 hours per week, they must work 35 hours per week, and so on. Nothing on the cause should be changed unless you get express permission from your sponsor that you can change it. And finally, interns must not enter the UK before their visa is granted, and they must leave the UK before their visa expires. I mention this because this is actually something that has caused some confusion among a lot of interns we have sponsored since the end of freedom of movement. Once you have applied for a work visa, you cannot enter the UK, even as a tourist, before that visa is valid. If you do, it will effectively cancel your work visa. Similarly, if you remain in the UK after your visa expires, you will not just revert to being a tourist. Instead, you will be considered an overstayer. If you want to remain in the UK as a tourist, you have to leave first and come back. Visas for French nationals, well, EU nationals generally, but French nationals certainly, are now accessed electronically. So I've shown you a picture here of what your visa might look like. It will show what category of visa you're in. So we have temporary work, government authorized exchange, and the validity dates. When an intern is granted a visa, they will have an online account where they will be able to see their immigration status. Employers also use this online system to collect the details they need for their right to work, to have that on file. So then I guess we're getting into what AIESEC does. How can AIESEC help with this visa? We are one visa sponsor. Like I said, there are a handful of organizations that can sponsor for this visa. We are one of them. AIESEC UK is a program designed specifically to allow students and graduates from countries outside the UK to gain experience working for UK companies. And AIESEC UK is one of the only few authorized schemes that can provide flexibility within the category. Generally speaking, I think we mentioned in the duration earlier, the visa is valid up to 12 months. AIESEC has the ability to grant an additional 12 months if an extension of the internship is required. Some of the benefits of working with us are that we provide very personalized support to employers throughout the process. Basically, you work with team of myself, a legal advisor, and we are with you every step of the way. You always have a point of contact. AIESEC also offers employers the option to source interns from AIESEC directly. So if you already have an intern in mind, we can help you with visa sponsorship, or we have a program that you can join where you can source from our pool of interns, and we sort that out for you. As mentioned, after an intern has worked for the initial 12-month maximum, AIESEC can offer further sponsorship for up to 12 more months, as long as the candidate is able to go back to their home country to reapply. And our assessment process is generally very quick and easy. There are, like I said earlier, different requirements that different sponsors have. Some require interviews, site visits, English tests for the candidates. In most cases, we don't require that. We have a different system of assessment. So to get into our requirements specifically, as mentioned, each sponsorship scheme will have its own set of eligibility criteria. So you have to, in order to apply for the visa, you have to meet not only the government's criteria, but the criteria of the sponsoring organization. So for AIESEC, our criteria is broken into 3 categories. We have to assess the candidate, the role that you're offering, and the employer. For the candidate, they must be at least 18, and they must either have a degree awarded within the last 3 years, or they must be currently enrolled on a degree course. The minimum degree that we can accept is a bachelor's degree. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to offer sponsorship for secondary school students, for example, which is pretty standard. I don't know of any other schemes that do under 18s or anything under a bachelor's degree. For the role, it must be full-time and meet the national minimum wage. As mentioned, full-time means at least 35 hours per week. The role must be temporary. This means it can be for a maximum of 12 months and a minimum of 4 weeks. And it must be supernumerary. And what this means is that it is not an essential role within the company. It is a role that is designed specifically for training. It should not be a part of the company's general structural organization. And the role must also be skilled. When we talk about a skilled level role, that usually means that it's the type of role that would require degree level education to do. So that's why the visa is generally meant for university students. And finally, the employer must be a UK registered company, charity, or government department. And they must have the financial and personnel resources to support the intern for the duration of the internship. And that's something that we assess when you've submitted an application with us. There are a few industries we cannot sponsor for. Hospitality, which is very common within the GAE. Most sponsors are not able to sponsor for hospitality at this time. There have been a lot of requests for this, so I'm wondering if there's going to be a change to that at some point in the future, but for now, that's the case. We also cannot sponsor for care. This is sort of like nursing home care, agriculture, or law. There are specific sponsors who are licensed specifically for legal roles, so those sponsors would be more appropriate for those roles.
Sarah, we have a question from Thomas Egg. Can
Sure.
a non-EU resident apply for?
Non-EU?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, anyone from any country can apply. If you're non-EU and you're applying from the EU, you would just have to be able to show that you are legally resident in the EU. So if you're a student studying in France, for example, and you have a student visa there, that's fine.
Thanks.
Okay. Lastly, we'll just quickly get into what the fees are involved. And again, this is an example because I'm using AIESEC as the example here. Every different sponsor will have a different fee structure. AIESEC's fees generally consist of two parts. There's a registration fee. This is just for the application. And then there's a sponsorship fee for the period of time that we're sponsoring the intern. For a first-time application, the registration fee is £600. Any application after that is £150 for the application. And then the sponsorship fees are broken down into how long we are sponsoring you for. So that's the shortest internship between 1 to 3 months is £650. A medium-term sponsorship is £750. The long term is £850. And this is a general idea of what sort of fees might be involved in the sponsorship process. I think that our fees are fairly similar to other sponsorship organizations, but this is just what you'd have to have in mind in terms of preparing for what you would need to have. And then there's also the fees you pay to the UK government. The visa application fee right now is £298, and there's also an immigration surcharge. It's important to note that these fees are not our fees. They're not, no sponsor has anything to do with the UKVI fees, which means that these can change without our knowledge. So it's always important to make sure you're checking the website, which I've linked there, to get the most up-to-date information. Regarding the immigration surcharge, you're asked to pay this if you're going to be in the UK for a significant period of time, which means if you're applying from outside the UK and you're staying shorter than 6 months, you will not be asked to pay that fee. And that's, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. That's just the most general information. Yeah.
I would like to thank you very much for this insight about government authorized visa. And anyway, we have got questions almost every day. So we sent you quite a lot of students or people looking for visa sponsorship. So anyway, we are, and if you need more information, Tara has written her email, so you can get in touch with her directly. Thank you, Tara.
Feel free to contact me with anything you might have. Yes, I hope this was informative, and thanks very much for having me.